The development team for Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen, the upcoming MMO RPG by Visionary Realms, has been known to drop hints here and there about things they're working on or considering in the game development process. Whether it's bits and pieces of a new logo or dwarven mysteries, it's good to keep your eyes and ears open when new information is released, as there may be more than is readily apparent. With this in mind, I want to go all the way back to the October 2018 newsletter. In it, we are given a piece of lore that didn't get a lot of attention at the time, and has since faded into the background. I'm talking about the story of the twin-head god, to be specific. If you don't recall this piece of lore, there are links in the description to both the newsletter and Chris Kane's fantastic reading of the tale on his channel, which I would highly recommend you check out. As new information about other systems in Pantheon has come out, specifically the perception system, this story has taken on a new meaning in my mind. So, in this video I want to try and answer a few questions. Firstly, who or what is the twin-head god in relation to the other known deities of Terminus? Next, is the twin-head god linked to the creation of keepers? And lastly, is there a connection, from a gameplay standpoint, between becoming a keeper in Pantheon and the story of the twin-head god? So let's explore these questions, and then as always, be prepared for speculation and theory crafting, so try to keep an open mind. In the lore of Terminus, we know quite a bit about the deities of the 9 races. Whether it's the dwarven god Kazas, the human deity Osari, or the halfling protector Kirin, the involvement of higher beings plays a significant role in the story of most of the races. Some have acted as leaders, while others have betrayed their people in search of influence and power. The twin-head god is not amongst the known deities of the races. It isn't mentioned in any of their backgrounds, nor in its own tale is any specific race noted. Yet, Terminus did exist prior to the 9 races' arrival on the planet. In the October 2019 newsletter, J.N. Gerhardt, lead writer for Pantheon, commented, "The planet did exist before the dwarves, elves, and ogres, and so forth arrived. Long before, in fact." So with this in mind, it's certainly reasonable to conclude that there were other gods which predate those that came to Terminus during the collisions. So let's say the twin-head god is one of those pre-existing deities. In the tale of the twin-head god, we are told, long before the celestial boundary was enacted and the activity of gods was greatly restricted, a deity known as the twin-head god would roam around the mortal realm. The celestial boundary is well defined in the lore and depicted as follows. There seemed to be an ethereal seclusion, more deeply felt than the physical one. At this time, the first half of a stipulation believed to be enshrined within the Dragon Accord began to show evidence, hereafter called the celestial boundary. Since the twin-head god was not subject to the celestial boundary, it was free to interact and influence the denizens of Terminus. This is highlighted in its tale. The twin-head god had a desire to wield greater influence in the mortal realm, and would commune with the mortals who found the door to his wilderness. The next question, then, is what has the twin-head god's influence been? In Terminus, keepers are ones who see the hidden things of the world and perceive that which cannot be perceived by others. It is through the development of the perception skill that one becomes a keeper. The FAQ for Pantheon tells us, through the perception system, players can become a keeper, and quest dialogue is recorded in your Tome of Keeping. This was elaborated on in the November 2018 newsletter, which adds, perception is a measure of a character's ability to notice detail and discern deeper meaning within the various people, places, and things they encounter on their journey. So the twin-head god watched from within the folds of reality, hidden from all but the most spiritually aware. It would seek out those who had the predisposition to accept the knowledge or skills it could impart. Once identified, the twin-head god would set upon teaching them the hidden paths of wisdom that exist in the world. The twin-head god appears to sow the seeds of the perception skill keepers must master in order to advance in that role. Going back to the FAQ, it's explained that the perception skill is comprised of 2 sub-skills. It states, keepers can utilize 2 skills to progress through the perception system, a passive skill called Insight and an active skill called Investigate. Again, further detail comes from the November 2018 newsletter, which notes Insight is a passive skill, while Investigate is an active skill. The twin-head god, as its name implies, has 2 heads, Lycus, or Steward of the Seeker, which is the left head, and Noct, the Knight of Wilderness, which is the right head. As a representation of perception, the twin-head god may physically represent these sub-skills. Now, as to which one is which, that's a question of interpretation. The only hint from the tale may be when Lycus broke off a piece of the celestial stone and drove it into Noct's left eye, the stone now being in its sight or insight. So maybe Lycus represents investigation, while Noct represents insight. The celestial stone itself isn't referred to anywhere in the official lore as far as I could tell. Yet there have been instances in a few developer streams where the perception system is being used or described in which this image is part of the interface. We might be looking at a shard of the celestial stone when we use our perception skills. On to our final question. What might this mean from a gameplay perspective? So let's suppose that the twin-head god created Terminus's first keepers, as it were. One of the questions that has been debated in the community when the perception skill is discussed is why would anyone choose not to become a keeper? After all, the way it's been described, the skill doesn't sound particularly onerous to develop. It's been characterized as requiring an investment of time in exploration, but no other specific drawbacks have been divulged. What if there was a cost to being a keeper? And by cost I mean something that creates a barrier or an obstacle for your character in Pantheon. This is suggested in the Twin-Head God's tale, as it states, "For Lycus knew the ancient secrets of this world would not be so easily found or acquired without great cost." Lycanthropy is detailed in the October 2018 newsletter. The Twin-Head God created the Lycandral, those given a piece of his power called the Soul of the Wilderness. This is depicted as an ability to transform into a wolf, great speed and strength with an increased lifespan to gain the deepest understanding mortals could hope for. But Noct spoke his own magic during the creation of the Lycandral, creating the Nightwolves. Lycandral and Nightwolves all have similarly poor reputation amongst most people groups. Perhaps this gift limits your ability to interact with other players or NPCs. We know that faction will be an active mechanic in Pantheon. As a keeper, I might be attacked by the city guard of my own starting area. Or perhaps it's a permanent debuff. The newsletter tells us they are often accused of carrying diseases and spreading cursed blood, which has some merit perhaps. To suffer under a constant condition or negative stat effect would certainly be something to consider in your choice to follow the path of a keeper. Lastly, what if you were unable to control your powers you possessed? Would you be trusted in a group if the potential existed for your lycanthropy to rear its head at an inopportune moment? The lore states they may be stable and enduring, perhaps even noble, yet most wrestle with an inability to trust outsiders, their own kind, or even themselves. They carry the burden of wilderness in their soul, but ache from their inability to access Lycus himself. So the cost of being a keeper is perhaps the curse of lycanthropy. Would you sacrifice your humanity, as it were, to gain the ultimate knowledge of Terminus? In a game that emphasizes social play and interdependence, what if you were shunned from society? What price would you pay to possess the gift of the Twin-Head God? As always, thank you to everyone who has supported me in making these videos. I really enjoy reading and responding to the feedback and comments. So what other areas of lore would you like to see discussed? Are there any mysteries you want me to delve into? Let me know in the comments. And until next time, cheers, and thanks for watching.